Hello, folks. It is I, Albert Bouchard. Welcome to another episode of Most Cowbell. And today, I am going to honor the request that I got from many people about how astronomy got written. Okay, so here's the story as I remember it. Okay, so I always say that Tyranny and Mutation was an album that was created in hotel rooms, which it basically was. But we also had a band house. I believe it was in Dix Hills or Deer Park, somewhere in around Huntington. We had a band house, and we worked up Hot Rails to Hell there. We worked up Seven Screaming Disbusters. So we had that house for a while. And then we got another house in a place called Eaton's Neck, which was a beautiful place. It was like a summer house out on the Sound of Long Island, the Long Island Sound, which is facing Connecticut, right? So anyway, around that time, at the end of 1981 or so, it was hurricane season. And we had some gigs in Florida. We played a gig in Pensacola, and that was the last gig we played. I remember being in my motel room and watching the water come under the door and flooding. I was on the second floor, by the way, and so it was flooding the second floor. So all the water was dripping down on the first floor. It was a mess. So anyway, they canceled the rest of the gigs, and we took the train. Because there was no flights, there was no buses. There was only the train. So we took the train back to New York because we had canceled the last 5 gigs or so of the tour. I just rented a new house in Babylon, or West Babylon, Long Island, where Denise, my wife, was living with her child Desiree, and also her sister Donna and Donna's boyfriend Teddy. So they were all living in that house, and I had barely been there. I'd been there like one day, I think, and then I went on tour, and then I came back. I took the train, I took the Long Island Railroad out there, and I came to my house, and there was somebody else there with my wife. So I left. I called up Eric Bloom and I said, Eric, I need a place to stay. Somebody else is in my house. He goes, I understand. And so he said, well, listen, you can come to the house in Eaton's Neck and you can stay there. So I did. I went to Eaton's Neck, stayed there. We worked on the songs for Tyranny and Mutation for a week or so, and then we basically went in and cut the album. Well, one of the songs that we worked up for Tyranny and Mutation was a song called Astronomy, and it was a song that my brother Joe. The lyrics had just appeared after the first record. They appeared in the house, and everybody thought, "Oh, that's weird. That's a weird little song." So Joe had written this thing. The clock strikes 12 and moondrops burst out at you from their hiding place. Like acid and oil on a madman's face, reasons tend to fly away. Like lesser birds on the four winds, like silver scrapes in May. And now the sands become a crust, and most of you have gone away. Have gone away. You know the song. You know how it goes. So anyway, so Joe wrote that, and it was basically 3 verses and no chorus really to speak of. Just 3 verses, just the same. So he had done this thing. This is for Tyranny and Mutation, and it was one of the last songs that had been submitted for the record. And Sandy Pearlman didn't like it because Joe had basically left out half the lyrics, maybe over half the lyrics. There was a lot of lyrics that Joe left out. And he thought, well, it's a nice little ballad, why don't you like it? And Sandy said, I don't like that you left out all the lyrics. So, cut to, Tyrion Mutation has been released. We've gone back out on the road to support that record. And then we come back to the city. I still don't have a place to live. I had moved back in with Helen Wheels. Towards the end of that, I met this girl in Chicago, Illinois, named Susan Heffernan. And I decided that I wanted to spend... She had the week off from her job. I can't remember what it was. It was some sort of menial job she was not happy with. But anyway, she had the week off, so I ended up spending the week with her. And I came back to Helen to tell her, oh, I've met this great person. And Helen was really not interested at that point and got really pissed off and said, you're out of here, buddy. You can go back and live with Eric. So that's exactly what I did. I went back to Eric's house. By then, he had a house in Port Washington. But he was still dating the person who became his wife, Myra. And so he spent most of his time with Myra in Myra's apartment on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. So I was alone in the house, and I was in love with this girl, Susan Heffernan. And one day I was thinking, I want to write a song about Susan. So I thought of this riff right here. And I was like, oh, hey, that might work with Joe's song. Okay, so, and I mentioned in the last vlog that Joe originally wrote that song on the bands. We had a Wurlitzer piano. Before we had the Wurlitzer, we had a RMI electronic piano, which did not sound anything like a piano, and it didn't sound good. It was a horrible sounding thing. Alan dutifully played it. But eventually, when we got out on the road, we decided that thing had to go. That RMI piano had to go. Rocky Mountain Instruments. It had to go, and so Alan got himself a real suitcase Wurlitzer piano, cheap thing, but it was a wonderful sound, and it sounded like this. You'd hit it and you could hear the hammers distorting. It was a great sound. So Joe had played it on that. So then when I was playing this, okay, so the chords came later. But I realized that I had these three chords, and they made a really nice sound. And I was like, how can I expand? And because Joe had that, so he already had those chords, but I had kind of distilled them into a little more basic thing. With a riff. And by the way, the riff, when I originally wrote it, was... Now, Blue Oyster Cult, when they recorded it, they changed it to... I don't know if you can see the difference. Or... They put the 4 in there before its time. And to be honest, I didn't even realize they did that until after it was recorded. And I'm like, shit, you guys, you didn't play the riff right. And they're like, no, that's the way it should be. So anyway, in the Reimaginos version, I play the riff the way I wrote it. Just an E minor chord. Then the 4. It just made sense to me. Anyway, whatever. It's probably apples and oranges by now. At that point, it was easy to come up with the... Photos that the four winds bow to those like Illinois bow. One to take you in. Take you in, the other one visit. I suck at piano, as you know. But anyway, you get the idea. And then astronomy, it's kind of funny how the song just builds and builds and builds to the simplest version of those chords, and with a long held out note by the vocal, and it to me it makes it. It's a wonderful thing, and so that's basically how it got written. I'm not going to go into all the other things, but I was able to incorporate all of Sandy's words. I think maybe there was a word or two that I left out. And of course, as when I was doing it with Imaginos, Sandy suggested other words, alternate lyrics, which I include in the Reimaginos version. All of Sandy's alternates. So anyway, that's how Astronomy came to be. It never made it on Tyranny of Mutation, but it made it on the next record with, 99% of all of Sandy's lyrics. Sandy was happy. I was happy. Joe was happy. And, of course, the proof is in the pudding. Other people, other musicians have admired that song. And even some of my friends have gotten married, and that was their first dance song. So how do you like that? That's crazy, but I'm happy to have written it, and I think it is it's a little complicated, and yet has this kind of perpetual building sensation, and basically it was inspired by Susan Heffernan. There you have it. That's the story. And hopefully next week I'm going to have something totally different. So be prepared. Over and out. Albert Bouchard here. Have a good week.